Well, hey everybody, welcome back to Rooted Refresh. I'm so glad you're here with us this week. This, believe it or not, is already episode 20, and today we're going to be camping out in 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 1 through 12. Let's jump right in. Now, if you've ever felt the pressure to perform your faith, or if you've ever wondered what it actually looks like to live differently in a world that feels loud and complicated, this passage is for you. Peter actually starts with a pretty clear invitation. He says right in verse 1, "Therefore, rid yourselves of all malice and all deceit, hypocrisy, envy, and slander of every kind." He's basically telling all of us we need to just leave the old stuff behind. Get rid of that bitterness. Stop pretending. Quit comparing yourself to each other. Stop throwing those little digs at each other at times. And then Peter paints a beautiful picture. He says in verses 2 and 3, like newborn babies, crave pure spiritual milk, so that by it you may grow up in your salvation. Know that you have tasted that the Lord is good. And that's awesome right there. Peter doesn't tell us, hey, try harder, get it right. Instead, he says, get hungry again. He tells us we need to remember what it felt like when we first tasted God's goodness. And then he tells us to keep going back for more and more of that. Well, now Peter's going to shift and he's going to talk about us being living stones. And he actually starts out by showing us that Jesus is the living stone, the cornerstone. And we are those living stones built upon Jesus into a spiritual house. Peter says in verses 4 and 5, as you come to him, the living stone, rejected by humans but chosen by God and precious to him, you also, like living stones, are being built into a spiritual house to be a holy priesthood. Now, this is great right here. Think about what Peter's telling us. You're not just a random person trying to figure life out. You're part of something that God is actually building. You're not building it alone. A few verses later, Peter reminds us who we actually are. Look at verse 9. He says, you are a chosen people, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession, that you may declare the praises of him who called you out of darkness into his wonderful light. Now that always hits me just right square in the chest to think that I am chosen, royal, God's special possession. Now think about this in your life. It's not because you've earned it. Instead, it's because he's decided you and I are worth calling out of the darkness. And so now Peter's going to tell us how to live all of that out in everyday life. So Peter kind of brings it on home in verses 11 and 12. By telling us, dear friends, I urge you as foreigners and exiles to abstain from sinful desires, which wage war against your soul. Live such good lives among the pagans that though they accuse you of doing wrong, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day he visits us. That's absolutely spectacular how honest this is. And we need this in our lives. Peter doesn't say everyone's going to like you or agree with you. He says people actually may still dislike you. They may accuse you. But instead, just keep living the way you're living because it will make them curious about the God that you profess, that you belong to. Now, that's the quiet power of living a rooted life. It's not loud. It's not flashy. It's just consistent, kind, loving, different in all of the best kind of ways. So here's my simple challenge for all of us this week. Ask yourself one question. Where am I still holding on to some of that old stuff Peter is telling me to put away, to put down, to get rid of? And then, how can I go after that pure spiritual milk once again? Well, the answer is to open the Word, to get rooted in His Word, to spend time in the Word with Jesus, letting Him rebuild whatever needs rebuilding in your life. But now, while you're doing that, remember, you're not alone in this. You're a living stone being built into a spiritual house, something beautiful by God. Well, that's 1 Peter chapter 2, verses 1 through 12, and we'll leave it there for episode 20 of Rooted Refresh. But let me just ask you, as always, if this has encouraged you, would you like it? Would you leave a comment? Would you subscribe to the channel so that you don't miss a single episode? If it has really encouraged you, would you share this with a friend? Maybe someone you know that needs this reminder today. Well, in the meantime, we'll try to finish this out in chapter 2 next week, but I want you to make sure, stay rooted so you can stay refreshed. We'll see you next time here on Rooted to Refresh.